Okay, looks like we're ready to get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Calming Nourishment. My name is Amy Rosenfeld. I am the Community Outreach Program Manager for Northern Westchester Hospital, part of Northwell Health's Center for Healthy Living. I have with me my colleague, Rachel.
Hello.
Rachel
And
is, go ahead, Rachel. Introduce
oh,
yourself.
sure. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I'm a health educator at Northern Westchester Hospital. So we're happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. This program is being recorded. I see there's already a question in the chat. Yes, there will be a recording available to you after the webinar, probably either later this afternoon or tomorrow, posted to our YouTube page, and the link will be sent to all registrants. But we hope you can stay with us live and join with us here today. This program is a combination program. It's of course, a mental wellness program and a cooking program, as well as a gardening planting program. And Rachel, our mental health expert and licensed clinical social worker, will explain that a little bit more about what this is about.
Absolutely. So our goal here is to introduce a way to combine an activity that might already be a part of our everyday lives, planting, cooking, but also adding that in to an opportunity for calm and relaxation. A lot of times we find it hard to set aside a separate time to take care of ourselves, to relax because we're so busy, we have so much on our schedules. But it's really important to find a time to pause, engage our senses, and seek a moment of calm, and we can do that while still checking items off of our to-do list. And that can be a practical and sustainable way to support and nourish our well-being. And today we're going to kind of demonstrate how planting, even just in a container, even indoors, can give us the opportunity to connect with nature and also take pride in our produce, which can be really fulfilling.
Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, it's going to be kind of a whole picture, a ground to table activity where you can really not only learn a little bit about a new skill, perhaps a planting exercise, gardening, and how you can integrate that into your life, but also some healthy recipes utilizing some of fresh herbs that we're going to show you how to plant today. And then, of course, enjoying them in a mindful way. I am a registered dietitian, so I'll be talking along the way as Rachel demonstrates for us verbally how we can really engage with our activities from a sensory perspective and a wellness perspective. I'll be giving you some nutrition tips and cooking tips along the way. So get clinical expertise from all angles. If you have any questions as we're going along, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A function, and we'll be sure to respond to them in a timely way. And of course, you will see, as you see a bubble next to my head, you will see instructions and the recipe and ingredients to prepare along with us. And we do encourage you to participate along with you if you have everything prepared. It will help you really to learn the exercises and help you to incorporate them into your daily routine. But of course, you can also just watch and enjoy, and the recording will be available for you to practice on your own another time, whatever works best for you. In your email boxes, you should have received the recipes as well as the planting list, so you have all of the supplies ready for yourself. If you didn't get it for any reason, feel free to put your email in the chat, and I'll be sure to send that to you after the program so you have them. We'll be making two different recipes today. Strawberry mint spritzers, as well as a pesto recipe. So very versatile, very timely, seasonal recipes we're doing today. Okay, so first we're going to start with the planting exercise. Rachel's going to demonstrate that for us. So I'm going to turn your thoughts and attention to Rachel.
Yes. So I like the idea of finding a way to plant. This could be in a garden, but we wanted to show a way that you could garden inside with things that you already have on hand to make it really, really simple. And I think it's a really profound connection between the natural world, right, and our food. And it can be really beneficial for us to see that visual process of growing food, nurturing a plant, and then actually being able to enjoy your produce. So I think that's a really cool opportunity that we have. And it gives us the ability to feel proud of our efforts, right? We're creating something usable that we can use to nourish ourselves and the people in our lives. If you have kids in your family, this can also be a really fun activity to do with kids, but I think anybody can get a benefit out of gardening.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And the
totally.
ingredients that we're making today, what that you're planting with fresh herbs, are a really healthy way to season your food without adding a ton of sodium, adding more vitamins and minerals, to really give a lot of robust flavor to your dishes in a fresh way, especially as we're coming into the summer months and having a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables available to us seasonally. So starting your own garden allows you to always just pull a little bit of herbs and add them to your dishes to brighten them up all of that more, and to flavor it without adding a ton of excessive sodium or unhealthy things to your food.
Absolutely. So today we're going to be planting an herb seedling. I have my very intense Elmo garden gloves on. You don't need to wear gardening gloves if you really want to get in and have a sensory experience, but you can also have a sensory experience with the gloves. It's really a matter of personal preference. And you can also use like latex or nitrile gloves if you prefer not to get hands dirty, but always good to get your hands dirty too. You just want to make sure to really wash them well before you eat. So today we're going to be planting an herb seedling, and this is my little mint plant friend. So you can find these at a garden center, or a lot of times grocery stores just sell this. They're not too expensive, but an alternative option is to buy seeds, which are usually just like $1 or $2. With the seeds, you do need to do a little bit more, right, to actually get your produce. So with a seed, you need more time and it does need some patience, but it can be really exciting to see a plant kind of develop throughout that process, from just a seed in a little container pouch to like a fully formed plant. This plant actually was grown from seed. And what I think is cool about mint is this is a plant that grew year after year. So I did not plant this mint seed. I think I planted it a year or two ago, and it continues coming back. And so I think that's a really cool opportunity. Mint is a weed, it grows like a weed. So if you plant it outside, just make sure it's in an area where you're comfortable with the pot or the area it's spreading to. But it can be a great plant to kind of continue sustaining its growth year after year, but also great for a container. So,
Just to clarify a little bit, Rachel, so you want to
yeah.
plant your mint separately from the rest of your fruits and vegetables because it will take over your garden, right?
Absolutely. It's an
Okay.
aggressive weed, which is great if you love mint and you want a lot of it, but not so great if you're trying to grow something else or trying to keep it contained. So I usually recommend a pot for mint, unless you have like an area boxed off if you have a garden or something. But I think a pot is great because they do tend to spread. But yeah, it's an exciting plant. And you know what I love about mint, even when you just have your seedling, if you get close enough, you can smell it. You can also rub your fingers on it and get that great minty flavor and scent. And so that can be really exciting, both for kids and adults, to kind of experience that connection right away. Oh, this is mint. I know what this is. This is something that's, you know, potentially energizing, right? Scents can really help our mood as well. And mint, you know, if you're trying to figure out how a certain herb or a certain smell can make you feel, you can look to the plant itself. So for example, mint, right, is a weed. It grows wild, it spreads all over the place, it likes the sun, it likes multiple environments. So mint gives you energy and it can be a mood booster. So that's kind of a
Hmm.
cool connection to look to your herbs and look to your flowers and other scents to say, okay, how can I use this to benefit my mood and my mental well-being? So that's good to know.
Interesting. And I'm sure
Yeah.
also if it's a nostalgic smell for you, mint, that it can elicit some positive memories, which of course also could be a mood booster, right?
Totally, absolutely.
Yes.
And you can, every time you're smelling something, whether in cooking or gardening, kind of always, I always encourage, think what it brings you back to. What is this making me think about? What is this making me remember? Do I have any, you know, good memories or connections with loved ones in my life that connect to the smell? And kind of give yourself a moment to take, I call it like a little mental vacation, right? Just visit that place for a moment and think about those times. And that can be really beneficial for our mood and also give us a little bit of an escape from any stresses we might be having day to day. So cool. Okay, so We're talking about container gardens today. So what that means is you need to find a container. And Amy, you want to talk about what options that you might have for different containers?
Yeah, sure. So a container can be anything that you can find in your house. It could be a leftover yogurt container, like a quart size container. It could be half of a juice carton, like a wax coated juice carton, or even a plastic one, as long as you keep the edges smooth on the top would be fine. Um, or a milk container, anything that you have can be repurposed. And it's great because then you're making use of these plastic containers that hopefully you're recycling. You can make use of them in another way. So you don't have to go out of your way to purchase if you want to start a garden, or if you don't have a whole lot of space and you want to have pots of gardening on your deck or on your porch area or even on your front steps. Or even inside, you can do it inside. You don't need to go out and buy all these pots and supply. You can use what you have on hand. So takeout containers, yogurt containers, half of juice cartons or milk cartons works just fine.
Yeah. And you just want to make sure the space at the top is kind of large enough so that a plant can grow. And the next step that you're going to do is make some holes in the bottom, because you want to make sure that there's an
Yes.
opportunity for the water to drain out. As you can see, I just took a sharp knife and made a couple little indentations. Nothing fancy. Water doesn't care. It just needs to be able to get out. So
Yeah,
that
the
works as
water needs to drain so that there's no, like if it's a big rainstorm, like we've been having here in New York the past couple of afternoons, or if you overwater it by accident, or if your kids get a little too excited about watering the plants, you want the water to be able to drain out so there's no seating water on the top that'll kill the plants. There is a way to overwater plants, so you need to have a drainage system.
Definitely. And what I recommend if you're deciding to do this, if it's outdoors, right, it's okay if the water just seeps out. But if it's indoors, like if you're putting it on a table or a ledge or something, you want to make sure there's something under. So actually, I'm going to use the yogurt container and then the yogurt lid underneath so it can catch some extra
No,
water. But
totally repurposing. There we go.
right. So you can put it on a plate or anything that you have hanging around just to make sure it catches that extra water that comes
And
out.
then it's nice if you're able to put them on your kitchen windowsill or something when you're cooking. It reminds you to say, "Oh, let me just grab a handful of basil, or let me grab a handful of
Mhm.
sage, or whatever you're cooking with, and dice it up to put fresh on top to garnish or to cook with." Kind of reminds you to do that when you have it in your cooking space. So it's not a bad idea to have them inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good visual too. I think it makes the area look nice and bright and a little oxygen production, right? Always a positive. And I do think it helps us remember to use it and also to feel good about it, right? I planted this, I'm growing something, right? It can be kind of like an exciting connection, and can kind of spruce up a room too. So the first step is going to be to fill your container, whatever container it may be, with soil, with dirt. So there's a couple of different options as far as where to get your dirt. So topsoil is usually sold at the supermarket, a hardware store, a garden center. You can use dirt from outside, but Amy, do you want to talk as I fill a little bit about why you have to be careful about that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And then I'll get to a question in the chat that I see there. You want to be careful about the type of soil that you're using, because if you haven't had your soil tested, you don't know exactly what's in your soil. So, for example, if you have a lawn that you treat with pesticides or any other gardening sprays, when you use that dirt and you grow food with it, you then ingest those pesticides and those chemicals. So you have to be really careful with that. Um, Even if you're not using pesticides or anything like that on your lawn, if you haven't had your soil tested, you don't really know what's in it. You don't know if it has any nutrients whatsoever. You don't know if it has some other type of toxin or heavy metal in there that wouldn't
Or
be
if you
good
live in
to.
a septic field, if you don't have sewers and you're on septic, it's not
Yes.
usually considered safe to actually plant, if there's septic fields there.
Yes,
So it's
another
just
really
something to
good
think
point.
about.
So you really, it's better if you haven't had your soil tested, it's better just to buy a bag of topsoil, preferably organic topsoil products that proclaim that they promote growth. Certain brands do that. That means they're adding some chemicals to that soil. And when you add the chemicals to the soil, it grows inside of the fruit or vegetable, and you are then ingesting that. So you always want to think about, just like us, the food that we eat becomes part of who we are. The stuff that the plant eats becomes part of who it is. And then you are ingesting that. So it's really good to use nutrient rich soil and soil where you know it's devoid of chemicals. The question in the chat, you don't have outdoor space. What kind of indoor spaces would allow the plant to thrive? Lights. Anywhere near a window. So if you have the brightest room in your house, to put them on a sunny windowsill, and of course providing it with water from your yourself, like either watering it with a watering can or getting it wet in the sink periodically, just anywhere bright. They also do have special products, and I actually use this sometimes in the wintertime, that have like a light attached to a special contraption. There are a lot of indoor plant lights like that. Lots of different brands carry them. They sell them on all different stores now. So you can have a self-contained garden that way, but really just put it near a bright sunny window.
And if you're not sure in your home or in your apartment, if you're not sure like which window is best, you can test it. You can put the plant somewhere for a week, see kind of how it looks. Are the leaves looking healthy? Are they wilting? You can move it to another window and kind of just find a good space. But generally a window that gets some sun is really a good spot, on a table or on a windowsill if it's big enough. Any kind of space will work as long as it has light and water. Yeah. So I filled my container about 3/4 of the way up with dirt, and it's definitely a great sensory experience, even whether you're wearing gloves or not, just to kind of like sense the dirt a little bit, notice how it feels, kind of that interesting different textures, right? My dirt contains some kind of larger, clumpier pieces, and then some almost like sandy, more fine textures. And you can go ahead and give it a little smell depending on where your dirt comes from and what's there, right? It might smell very earthy, kind of, it can remind some people, right, of the smell after a rain, right? Like I just got this from outside and it was raining a little bit, so it smells kind of wet, and it kind of brings back some of those memories of kind of running outside in the rain or kind of smelling that fresh rain smell. And you can kind of like notice those different textures in there and kind of think of this, as Amy was saying, it's a nourishing product, right? Even though you might be eating the actual plant, it's the soil that's giving it the nutrients. And so you're allowing your plant, right, to have these nutrients, to benefit from these nutrients. And then ultimately when you or your loved ones get to consume what you grew, then you're benefiting from those nutrients. So it's kind of being passed along, which I like. I think that's a nice thought.
And don't be hesitant to get dirty. Dirt is actually really good for our immune systems. We all want really good immune systems these days, especially if you're planting with kids, or you want them to get dirty. Dirt is a natural part of building immunity from birth to old age. There's lots of theories out there that says that we're too clean and it's causing some of the problems that we have. I know that sounds strange to say during a pandemic, but we need to get our immune systems working again. So a really healthy way to do that is to get outside, be outside, get your hands dirty, expose yourself to dirt, really boost your immune system. And in some cases, they say can reduce the onset or severity of allergies. How much soil do you put on top of the seeds, Rachel? And just enough to cover them an inch or two. So what's the next step? And what would you do for seeds?
Yeah. So with seeds, so usually what I like, because I garden a little bit, but I am by no means a gardening expert. I will definitely put that out there. It's more luck when I have plants that successfully grow, but I think it's part of the experience. So usually on the back of seed packets, it will tell you, because different fruits and vegetables and herbs have different amounts of soil they want to be in. Generally, I would say like an inch or so of soil is usually typical for seeds. But if you look on the back of the seed packets, they usually kind of recommend this is what this plant prefers. And it'll also tell you how widely to space your seeds, right? So if you're planting, for example, in a container, you might just put a couple seeds in. If you have a bigger container or a bigger space, you might be putting rows, right? And it'll tell you, usually it's an inch or two apart from one seed to another. And so, yeah, I would go along with that. And I know we got a question before as well about, garden pests and gardening advice. So, there's a lot of great resources online. The National Gardening Association is just garden.org. That's all it is, garden.org. And they have tons of information and resources about, different pests, how to, if you're getting started and planting for the first time, what are some advice, how to care for plants, how to deal with any, if is it overwatered? Is it underwatered? That's just a really great resource. So if you're looking to learn more, garden.org is something I would recommend. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that in the chat. And so, there's a lot of great resources out there. And I would encourage, I know there's a lot of really champion gardeners out there, and I commend those individuals, but you do not have to be a pro. I often, I've had house plants and outdoor plants that have not survived, and that's tough, but you just keep trying and kind of learn along the way and look up questions you might have, even just Googling stuff, seeing what resources are out there. So I think it's a fun experience, and I'm by no means a pro. So when we're moving on to our container for our seedling, what you want to do, and usually it'll come in kind of a smaller container that you have to kind of remove it from. And if it's a seedling container that has a couple different squares, you just want to be really careful when you're extracting it so you don't crush the roots. And what I usually recommend is you kind of hold the plants upside down and kind of help pat and squeeze them out so they can kind of fall out, as opposed to trying to pull them up when they usually get it. It's kind of easier to crush them that way. But plants, just like people, are pretty resilient. So, you would be surprised if you think, oh no, I really ruined this one. Oftentimes that's not the case. So you can be kind to yourself too. It's a pretty forgiving process. And I would know because I'm quite heavy-handed and I have had things survive. So don't worry too much about that. So what you want to do is, I'm going to kind of help my little seedling here come out. And so you're going to take this, which contains the roots. So it's going to be a little bit bigger than the area of where you're going to put the container in. And then I'm going to make a little well. So you can kind of use your fingers to kind of make an indentation in here and just make room. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of I'm pushing up the sides a little bit just to make sure that there's space. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of help my little seedling right into the container, right close to the top, so it's out and gets light. And then I'm going to go back to my soil, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and nestled in there. So I'm going to add
put enough soil to cover the roots, right?
Exactly. Cover the roots and kind of get close to the top of the container. You kind of can fill it the rest of the way up. I'm making a mess, but that's okay. That's part of the journey. And yeah, you want to make sure the roots are definitely covered. You can always
clean up the mess. You can always clean up the mess.
It's more fun when it's messy.
And then you can also, if you wanted to, especially if it's decoration in your house, some of my house plants, I've put decorative rocks on top, kind of holds the soil down, and it helps to hold the moisture in as well. You could do that. You don't have to, but it's definitely another option if you wanted to. And these can be rocks you gather outside. It's a fun activity. Go find some pretty rocks, or you can purchase them.
Yeah, and if you're planting with kids, for example, you could paint your container or draw on it, or kind of make it into a fun project.
Or yourself, if you're an artist.
Or yourself, that's true.
Doesn't have to be for a child.
Doesn't have to be pretty. You can paint it one color, which is what I would do because I do not have artistic abilities. But yes, you absolutely can make it into an art project, something that you're excited to look at. I'm happy to look at my yogurt container. It does bother me, but if you wanted to paint it or cover it up with something, you can certainly do that. So now, as you see, I've covered the roots of my mint plant. So you're not seeing any roots, and it's kind of right up to the top of the container. So it's coming out, which will give my plant the opportunity to get the sun that it needs to grow. And again, we have our holes on the bottom to make sure that it's going to get the water. And I'm going to keep it on this little plate to collect any extra water that might go through.
You're going to give it a good hydration now, right? Because once you plant something new, you need to give it a good soaking, right, Rachel?
Absolutely. So you can use, I have back here, your trusty watering can, or just a sink, or just a cup that you pour into it. And, I definitely encourage you as you go through the planting process, putting this in the soil, you're kind of patting down, you want to pat around to make sure it really has like a solid foundation, right? You see, like I'm doing around the plant, really notice the texture of the soil. Is it light? Is it heavy? Notice how you can kind of manipulate it with your fingers as you move around. And just kind of pay attention that you gave the plant this little home, right? This new place for it to grow and be nourished, and that you kind of created something both decorative, right? Both something nice to look at and nourishing, something that you can actually enjoy. And but like we talked about, you want to make sure to put this on a sunny window. You can put some water on it to start. And if you're outdoors, you want to, water it regularly. But of course, if it's raining, you don't have to. But if you're indoors, about once a week is usually a good call. And if you're wondering, should I water it more? Should I not? Just check the soil with your fingers. Does it feel wet? If it feels really dry, it probably needs some more water. And you can kind of go by the cues of the plants, the leaves, and how are they looking, and are they robust? Are they a little droopy? And if you give a little water, do they look a little better? That can kind of give you an indication. And
Awesome.
yeah. Oh, I made a mess.
Good
So
job. Thanks, Rachel.
thank
Um,
you.
so now we'll talk a little bit about what to do with the herbs, because we want to make sure we'll talk about what to do with them. And Rachel is going to help us engage in some calming exercises while you're watching me prepare some of the recipes. So in a minute, I'll tilt down my screen so you can see my hands and listen to Rachel's voice as we're talking. So the first recipe we're going to make are strawberry mint spritzers using the mint that we just planted. So nice purpose for it. Mint is extraordinarily versatile. Fresh herbs in general, like I said, are a really great way to season your food without adding a lot of calories, but adding a lot of nutrient-rich flavor to your food. Mint is also really great for settling stomachs. So if you're somebody who suffers from many GI issues, if you're pregnant, if you're just somebody who has some reflux or general discomfort or has a stomach virus, mint is really great for that. So you can brew it into tea. You can make the spritzer like we're about to, or just eat a piece of mint. We're going to make a recipe with strawberries, which most people aren't aware are really rich in vitamin C. In addition to oranges, the orange industry likes to think that they're the only ones who are rich in vitamin C, but in reality, strawberries, kiwis, peppers, tomatoes are all a great rich source of vitamin C and can be really great for boosting your immune system. Strawberries are also really rich in fiber and what's called antioxidants, which are natural disease fighters for chronic disease prevention like heart disease and cancer. So strawberry season, this is a wonderful time to enjoy all of your strawberries. The more local, the better. And this is a great refreshing beverage to try, especially if you're not the biggest water drinker or someone in your family isn't the biggest water drinker. This is a low sugar recipe to try to flavor your food, or your beverages without having juice and without having soda. This is a really, really refreshing option, and hydration is going to be so important from now, really in general, but especially now through August. So,
Awesome.
okay, so I'm going to tilt my screen down. I'm going to spotlight my video so you can always see my hands, but listen to Rachel and her soothing voice.
So you're going to start with the cutting board, and you're going to put a cup of chopped strawberries like Amy is showing right now. You can dump those out to your cutting board. And then you're going to add to that a quarter cup of chopped mint. And while you're kind of starting this process, right, you're going to use a knife to kind of cut them together. You can cut your mint into pieces and kind of pay attention if there's any smells releasing from your mint. What are you noticing? What kind of scents are coming up for you? Are there any memories connected? And then you're going to take a fork, the back of a fork, the back of a spoon, whatever you have on hand, and just start mashing up those strawberries, start releasing their juices. Same with the mint, right? With mints, the herbs have oils that they release that can really help flavor the food. So pay attention as you're doing this to the colors that are coming out, right? The bright reds and whites and pinks of the strawberries, the deep, bold greens of the mint, and pay attention to the both the smell and the color, right? You're kind of combining the two, you're creating something different together.
I
Notice the
was
vibrant, yeah, go for it.
No, I was just going to say that it's the second you cut into the mint, it's like a burst of smell that comes at you.
Mhm.
It's super enhanced. And the strawberries as well, because I have really fresh strawberries here. It's if you could be in my kitchen, there's a lot of strong smells from all the herbs in here. But the second you cut into it, it's very enhanced, which is lovely.
Mhm. Yeah, they release a lot of really strong scents. And I encourage you when you're chopping them up, or even if you have, a little seedling, if you kind of just pinch the end of the leaf, you can kind of get it to release some of that scent onto your fingers. And I always try to notice the different notes of smells, right? Is it a strong smell? Is it sharp? Is it kind of a softer, more subtle smell? Is it grassy? Is it spicy, right? There's all these different scent notes. And what I like about the strawberries, their smell is so sweet, so floral, so perfumey. And then the mint being more kind of earthy and a stronger flavor. I think the combination of them is a really lovely, kind of difference in aromas to experience. And their colors are so bold and bright. It's a very good kind of summer creation to have together.
Yeah, and this is a really good, if you're cooking with kids, like this is a really good way for them to be involved. The mashing of the strawberries could be 3-year-olds to any age can really do this. So this is a really great way to participate together. And you'll see a lot of recipes for like cocktails and beverages that require, say muddle the strawberries or puree them first. This works just fine. Cutting board and a fork. So no fancier equipment required. Okay, let's move to the next slide here. All right, Rachel. So now we're going to put it in our beautiful pitcher, right?
Absolutely. So any pitcher you have, you can just move all that lovely fruit that you just mashed up. You can put it right in the pitcher.
Oh, it's got a fun texture. It's like really like squishy and cold because my strawberries were
Hmm.
cold. I'm noticing that how fun it feels. Definitely feels
Absolutely.
very squishy.
And that's always a fun thing to pay attention to, the textures, the temperatures, how they kind of bounce off of your fingers, right? That can be a fun and different experience, right? Especially if we're really engaging our hands in that way. And those colors are really vibrant and beautiful.
I
So
have
the
my
next
lime
step is going
here.
to be limes. So as you're getting ready to cut your limes, I encourage you first roll them out like you see Amy doing, right? It's a great like tension relieving activity. And as you're doing that, you're actually helping to release those juices, right? It's almost like you're massaging those juices out. You can squeeze it like a stress ball. You can kind of notice those different textures. How does it feel? Is it bumpy? Is it soft? And before you cut into it, I encourage you to smell it first so you can notice the different scents when it's just as is versus when you cut into it. Kind of notice that contrast, right? A very faint, subtle, limey smell. And then when you cut into it, I think, Amy, maybe you notice similar to the mint, kind of that burst of
Oh
freshness.
yeah, definitely. Burst of freshness, effervescence, because it's
Mm.
very, very, very fragrant. And squeezing the juice out is very stress relieving.
Absolutely. It's like a stress ball, right? So you can really like notice that. And if you want, as you're squeezing the limes, you can kind of inhale and then with your exhale, as you breathe out, push into that lime and really squeeze out, kind of release that tension with your breath. That can be like a mini moment for relaxation, a mini moment for stress relief as you're producing something, as you're cooking.
Oh, I love that. I just tried that. You probably heard me deep breathing. I love that tip. That was awesome. I'm going to try that again. So I'm going to breathe in and now breathe out.
Yeah, release that. And what I love about that lime is, this is a fruit that's kind of creating, we're helping provoke those juices out of the lime. We're creating something from them. And they're also allowing us, right? Those limes are allowing us to release their juices. And I look at that as kind of a symbiotic or a mutual relationship, right? Like they're allowing us to extract their juices. We're getting that connection with nature and that benefit. So once you do that, definitely notice those smells going in there together, right? All those mixes of scents, sour,
Oh,
sweet,
smells
herbal, right?
amazing.
And you're going to add 4 cups of unflavored seltzer water. And then you want to engage your ears, right? Listen to those bubbles popping. Look inside, right? As you see in Amy's picture, those bubbles going down, 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 right? And I made this earlier actually. And what I thought was really cool, if you get down kind of at eye level with it, it's like a lava lamp, right?
Oh
The
yeah, yeah.
seltzer like floats up your strawberries and your mint, and you'll kind of see things moving here and there, right? And it's kind of like a lava lamp, which many people, right, used to enjoy kind of watching those bubbles float in and out. And so this is kind of like a little homemade lava lamp.
So
um,
great. I love that idea, Rachel.
yeah, and you kind of noticed, right, that pink, the new colors that were forming, and you can watch those bubbles for
Yeah.
just like a minute. You can watch all of those bubbles moving and just listen to the pop, right?
It's so soothing to listen to those bubbles.
Right. So it's a really a full-on sensory experience. So I definitely encourage you to just kind of key in, just, pay a little bit of extra attention as you're already doing something that's going to produce this lovely beverage for you, that you can also enjoy the experience too, and that it can be something beneficial for you. And we're going to let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes before serving, just to let kind of all those flavors meld and mold together. And as you wait, we're going to move on to our basil pesto. But if you're just waiting, if you're just making the spritzer, I encourage you to just kind of watch it on its way, right? Just kind of watch it moving forward, watch it kind of those bubbles popping and those fruits and herbs just kind of moving around in their beautiful new colors.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
going to be delicious. And I have to say, it would also taste good as a adult beverage. Just
Hmm.
saying, for the summer. Um, the second recipe we're going to make is a pesto. Pesto is a Italian traditional dip, sauce, marinade, spread. It is a wonderfully versatile way to flavor so many different foods in a nutritious, nutrient-rich way. Pesto traditionally is made with basil and olive oil, Parmesan cheese, pine nuts, and garlic, salt and pepper. But all it means, pesto is just a spread. So you can make pesto with nuts, you can make pesto with seeds, you can make pesto with different types of nuts and seeds, pistachios, walnuts, even peanuts could be a pesto. You can make it with any type of green, or I've seen pesto with peppers, I've seen pesto with all different types of vegetables. Definitely, probably always will include some type of oil. Olive oil is the traditional one, but it does not have to be olive oil. And this particular one that we're making is a spin on traditional pesto. It is a spinach basil pesto, and it's one that I use all the time. It's a great way to add extra nutrients into your meal, and adding not just basil but having a little bit more nutrition in there from the spinach. Spinach is a powerhouse full of fiber and vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. It's what you might hear commonly known as a superfood. So it is something definitely to encourage, and if your family isn't the biggest green eater, this is a great way to eat it because it's incorporated into the sauce. So this one will have Parmesan cheese, which is an excellent source of calcium. And of course, it's a cheese that is a little bit more well received if you're lactose intolerant. Some people digest Parmesan cheese just a little bit better, lower lactose level. So it's a great one to include. And I'm using real Parmesan cheese. I'm a purist as a dietitian. I like real ingredients. I'm not using the processed Parmesan cheese that can sit on your shelf for 10 years. I'm using real Parmesan cheese, and it's way better to use a little bit of the real thing than to deprive yourself and use some fake product. Our bodies are much more receptive to it and understand how to process it. So basil pesto isn't something you want to have like buckets of, because it's really high in calories from the cheese and the walnuts that we're going to use and the olive oil. But a little bit of the real thing, in my opinion, my clinical opinion, is better than lots of the fake stuff. So use the real cheese. You deserve it. Really good extra virgin olive oil. Really excellent for our hearts. It's a really healthy monounsaturated fat, which is great for protection of heart disease and has also been shown protection, good for your brain, protection of Alzheimer's, and just has a lot of nutritional benefits. Walnuts are the nuts of choice that we're using today because I happen to love walnuts. They're also a really great source of omega-3s, which is really wonderful for keeping your blood thin and reducing your risk of heart disease. And they're harder to get, omega-3s. You can get them from fish, but walnuts is a great alternative to getting them, especially if you don't eat fish or can't eat fish for any reason. And the basil is a really rich, flavorful herb. It's very well received by most people. It's loaded with vitamin K, which is really important for heart health as well. If you are on any medication that interacts with vitamin K, such as Coumadin, it's not appropriate for you to just have a lot of vitamin K. It's also from the spinach as well, actually. So you want to talk to your doctor about keeping those vitamin K levels consistent with your medication. But otherwise, this is a really well-received pesto. People can put it on bread as a dip or vegetables as a dip. You can put it on bread as a spread or as part of a sandwich. You can use it with pasta, of course, or pizza. You can use it as a marinade as well for fish, such as shrimp, or for chicken. So it's just a really versatile thing to have and to have around. You can make it in large amounts and then freeze it in ice cube trays for individual portions later on. I can't say enough about pesto. I think pesto is a really great thing to have, and this is the time of year to make it.
And we had so we had one question in the chat.
Yes, go
so
ahead.
someone's saying they tried to grow basil and it got thinner over time and it was challenging to make it lush. So I am no gardening expert, and I will say that from the get-go. I found that basil is a pretty sun-hungry plant, that it tends to really like a lot of sun. So if you're growing it indoors, it may be an opportunity to kind of try out different windowsills. If there's a specific window that gets like a lot of light at a certain time of day or a longer period of light. Some basil plants are more stubborn, right? There's some that might just end up being hardier plants than others. You also, with basil, sometimes they grow a little bit, it can grow a little bit wild and does need to be thinned in order to keep growing. So just to kind of keep track of the plant as a whole and what it looks like. And also, and again, this is like I would recommend like going on garden.org or another site just to kind of learn more about this, because there may be specific nuances or tips that I just wouldn't know of. But definitely if basil is growing flowers and you want the leaves, you want to pinch those flowers so that the plant's resources, right, all the plant's energy is not going into flowers, but rather into producing more leaves. So there's certain plant care tips that can help it grow. So that's just a couple of suggestions I have, but I definitely encourage you. I'm sure there's a lot more tips out there, to continue to look. And Amy, you were mentioning the cheese component. And just to note, I had some vegan family members that I decided to make this pesto for, and I actually decided to eliminate the cheese, and it was really good. It was really good. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. So just if you don't eat dairy or you can't eat dairy, it is possible. As Amy said, pesto is so versatile, and I was surprised at how good it was.
Yeah, the only thing you really need in a pesto is some type of vegetable, some type of nut or seed to give it some substance, and oil. The cheese gives it that extra pizzazz, but you don't have to have it for sure. Okay, so I'm going to tilt my screen, and Rachel, I have set up a food processor, but you certainly, anyone at home, you could use a blender instead, or you could really get those muscles going and blend it yourself. But I highly recommend a food processor if you have one.
And probably buy ground too, right? You could probably buy like a ground walnut or something like that.
Yes, of course. You can buy one that's already ground. You can get crushed garlic. You can speed up this process for sure. So I just got a hit of garlic smell. Woo, it smells delicious.
So you're adding 6 cloves of peeled garlic, a half a cup of walnuts, and you're going to add a teaspoon of salt and then half a teaspoon of pepper. And remember, like as you're doing this, this is a great opportunity to engage your senses, right? Amy was saying the garlic hit you right away, right? Smell those
Yep.
walnuts. Notice their texture too. Walnuts are really fascinating. They have like all these really different notes in them. And I think it can be really fascinating. Just kind of look at the contrast, right? The smooth garlic, it's kind of bright, almost off-white, yellowy, creamy color. The walnuts and their different kind of crags and definitions. And then as you're blending and as you're adding more things to your pesto, just notice how the colors are changing, right? Notice how multiple different elements are combining to form something new. And, you know, it's like a unique experience. Everything is different, and each of them individually are very distinct, and combined, they make something entirely new. So once you've gotten these to a good ground state where they're really well combined, you're going to move on to adding the next ingredients. But every time you take off that top, I encourage you to just give it a smell. Notice the different notes, right? Is it spicy? Is it smooth? Is it sharp from the garlic or earthy from the walnuts? Smell that basil as it's going in there and notice all those different colors, the browns and the greens coming in together, right? And the spinach as well. They each have their different scents, which can be like a really great combination together. And as I said, every time you're kind of adding more, keep opening that food processor, keep smelling those different scents, and you're gonna blend these mixes with the Parmesan cheese. So it's a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And if you are grating your own Parmesan cheese, that can be a great kind of rhythmic motion that you're doing to kind of de-stress. And as like some people really enjoy the stress relief of that rhythmic kind of up and down motion. And you can use that to kind of get out some stress and to kind of create something. And you're going to blend this mixture with the basil, the spinach, and the Parmesan cheese until it's really well combined, about 30 seconds. And again, notice, right, that bright white cheese, the green of the leaves, the brown, they're combining to form something completely new and different, which I think is really exciting. Like you're kind of getting closer to this process.
I'll
And
pop
as
off
you're
the
moving,
top so you can see what it
oh
looks like
yeah,
now.
look
I'm
at that color.
gonna scrape down the sides to make sure we have even blending in here.
Yep.
But as you can see, it makes a ton of pesto, this recipe. So you will have a lot of pesto for in your ice cube
Which is
trays.
great. I definitely recommend freezing it because it freezes really well, and then you can just pop it into the pan or the pot or whatever you're making and just kind of go from there. It can be really, really versatile. So
So
now
now
you're
I'm
gonna
gonna
go.
turn it on and slowly pour, everybody. If you're doing it with a blender, you can just like start and stop and add little bits as you're going. But the food processor is great because it allows you to really stay protected and do it as you're going.
Yeah. So you're gonna add 1.5 cups of olive oil slowly, blending for 30 seconds. And if you need to scrape down, or as Amy says, if you're using a blender, you can kind of stop and start. And really you're just looking for that smooth consistency. And definitely pay attention to that color, that hue, right? I notice as the olive oil adds, it kind of takes on this different, vibrant, a little bit lighter green color and kind of becomes its own substance, right? And you're making it like this spreadable consistency. And as you open that up, just smell what's coming out of there. Notice all those scents that are coming in, right? And it's also taking on its own texture, right? I always find it really interesting to think about where you started, right? These hard walnuts, this kind of intense flavored garlic, these leaves of the spinach and the basil, the powdery, right? You can feel as you're adding them in the powdery cheese and the kind of smooth and kind of strong scent of the olive oil. And they're all blending together to kind of create this new, unique experience. And I encourage
Yeah.
you to really smell it and notice all those different scents coming in there.
And so I've noticed that my pesto is a little thinner than I want it to be. I want it a little thicker. So I just added some more spinach.
Awesome. And I really like that about pesto. I notice this because I tend to not follow recipes. I tend to just throw things in a blender and in the food processor or whatever I'm using. And I think basil or pesto or any kind of pesto is great because it's so versatile. Oh, I added too much, it's liquidy. Let me add more leaves. Oh, it's too chunky, not blending. I can add a little bit more oil. And you can kind of work with it to get the consistency that you want, which I think is really great and allows you to be flexible. And if you're making a smaller batch too, you can just kind of play around with those textures. And what I
I
like
think it's
too
good.
is,
No, I was just going to say, I think it's good practice for, those of us who may be a little bit more perfectionistic and like trying to get, recipes just so.
mm,
Recipes like this it's really good practice for you to kind of just go with the flow and feel things out and not worry so much about it being perfect because they're you can't mess this up.
no, even if
You
it's
can't.
it's liquidy or too thick, it always tastes good. So
Yep.
there's really no downside. I mean, I've made multiple types of pesto over time, and I find that they all are a little bit different, but they're all good. And you can add in, as Amy was saying, they're very versatile. You can add other leaves. I like putting arugula in there, for example. Spinach is great, right? All these different ways to add nutrients. So I think it's just a great versatile recipe. And if you're cooking with kids or if you're new to cooking for yourself, I think it's just like a great and forgiving
Yep.
yeah, recipe to use.
Exactly. So that's better. See, the consistency is like a little better. I'm planning on using this um, um, to make pizza with my kids later on this week, which is also a really great common cooking exercise for them to really get their hands dirty with the dough. So I want it to be a little thinner so that it can spread, but you certainly could add more nuts if you like your pesto super thick. That's an option also to add more walnuts. I would take it easy on the cheese. We don't want to have a ton of cheese, but you definitely could add more nuts.
Yeah. And then you can kind of take it out, put it in ice cube trays, freeze it. But as you're kind of removing this pesto, just continue to engage your senses. Notice this new texture that you created, notice the color and the new smells. And I like thinking about, when do all the different smells, the walnuts, the cheese, the spinach, the basil, whatever you're using, when do they change from individual scents to something new, to this new creation? And when you smell what's final, does it smell familiar, right? Do you smell that and say, oh, I know that's pesto? And you can just think about the memory that's required to know what you're smelling is pesto, and that you actually did that. You created that, you made that. And I think that's a really positive and profound experience to have. And now the best part, we can taste it.
Yeah.
So I made a small version. I made a single version of the strawberry mints and lime spritzer. So I just had it in an individual cup. Cheers.
Right. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's refreshing. And I
Mm-hmm.
concur. I hold by the fact that this would be a very nice adult beverage this summer. So you
Agreed.
can use your imagination with that, and a very healthy way to enjoy that in a moderate way. So this I have here for a snack. I'll tilt my screen down so you can see exactly what I have here. I have my red peppers. I thought red would be a really nice contrast to my pesto here. So you can use it just as a dip, a nice little healthy dip.
Mine too.
Um,
I had a frozen one that I had made, so I was able to defrost it. I'm eating it on a little cracker.
mhm.
It's really
I
good.
think it's great. Have it as a spread. I really like, my husband really enjoys the pesto on like a fresh whole grain bread with tomato and eggs. It's one of his
Ooh,
favorite
that
things.
sounds
It's an
good.
interesting combination. He's always really liked it, and it is delicious. Um, but use your imagination, get creative, and we really hope that you feel the difference incorporating these types of calming exercises into your everyday routine. Mental health is health, and taking care of yourself can be just something you do while you're doing your everyday routine. It does not have to be something you set time aside for. I know myself as a busy working mom with two little kids, I don't have time to necessarily set aside additional time for calm. So I love that Rachel can teach us ways to incorporate it into my everyday life, like cooking, or gardening, or even just the simplest of tasks, taking a moment to breathe in and breathe out, really can make a difference. And we hope that you feel the difference after doing these exercises, and you add a, gonna be cheesy now, dash of relaxation into your everyday routine.
I'm very into the cheesy. I don't want to know if you want to unspotlight Amy. So I'm very into the cheesy. So one thing I'm going to add, right? I think like Amy, what you were saying is like making sure to kind of constantly nourish yourself, making sure to kind of think about your mental health, your self-care. If you decide to do a container planting, right? Check in with it every day. Make it like part of your own self check as you go past whatever room or whatever place in where you live it is. Pay attention to it. Is it growing taller? Are new leaves growing? Has it changed in any way? And as you do that, as you notice this plant, as you notice what it looks like in its development, use it as a self check. Okay, I'm going to give this plant water. I'm going to take care of my plant. Am I taking care of myself? Am I nourishing myself? Am I, kind of tending to my own needs, my own self care? So I think it can be a good reminder to kind of help us think about how we're taking care of ourselves, and if there's any room for improvement, if there's anything we can work on to kind of better care for ourselves. I always say you can't take care of others if you don't first take care of yourself. And I think the plant itself is even a good metaphor for that. You need to be tending to yourself so you can tend to it and your other responsibilities and priorities in your life. So I definitely think it's a great opportunity for reflection, for self-care. I see
Yeah.
we have a couple questions.
Yes, I see.
Yeah.
So freezing. So somebody mentioned they froze once and the texture wasn't good. It chunked. So when you freeze it, or any storage, you want to be sure to put a layer of the oil on top. That's a good tip. It's kind of like protective for the pesto. It doesn't live endlessly in your freezer. It's a couple of months. And once it's frozen into the ice cube trays, you do want to transfer it out and put it in a freezer safe container. So that it preserves the flavor. It's not a year long that it lives in your freezer. It will start to taste a little funky. And certainly in your fridge, in an airtight container with a layer of olive oil on top is a good way to protect it as well. The recordings, I see another question in there. The recordings we sent to you, as a registrant of this webinar, the recording will be sent to you via email, and there it will also have the entire library of all of our programs that we've had here at Northern Westchester Hospital Center for Healthy Living. We want to thank you for joining us today. I don't see any other questions. There will be a brief survey that comes up immediately following this presentation. We invite you to fill out the survey. It's very short. Just to see, how you enjoy the program, how we can improve, and what other types of programs we can continue to provide to support the health and wellness of our community as our top priority. So thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me today and for helping me to learn how to breathe in and out squeezing limes. That was a great new tip for me. I'm going to do that one on a regular basis. But in all seriousness, in general, I love doing programs with you. And I think it's mental wellness and cooking go so well together. And now we added gardening as an element. So please fill out the survey, and we hope to also see you at our calming walking series that we'll have next month, which will be a great way to learn to exercise and incorporate moments of calm, as well as learn some nutrition tips from me. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Be well.